Hey family, welcome back to the Protect the Play podcast, the place where we talk about real stories, real challenges, and real wins in real estate and in life. Today, I'm diving into some powerful questions that every real estate pro needs to think about, and not just for the business, but for the financial future. Let's go. We got Miss Charmaine Valentina Byers Brewer, my sister, one of the just literally one of the best people that I've ever met. I just enjoy being able to get to know her over the years, but also just being able to spend time and be able to work with her and everything else. So, Char's personal mission, her purpose is for being on this earth is to help others recognize and maximize their God-given talents. Her mission is to love God and others, to inspire her sphere of influence to be more than ever imagined they can be. As a continual learner, she intends to share her knowledge and expertise, striving to remain positive as it consistently relate to others through experience. Her desire is to make significant difference and impact in the lives of all she connects with. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Gandhi. Shout out to my sister Shar. How you doing today, Shar?
I'm doing good. It's funny listening to that. It sounds amazing when somebody else reads it, So thank you for that. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get down to the nitty gritty and talk about some of these questions that every realtor should know.
I'm excited about this too. I'm definitely excited about it. So we'll go ahead and get the show started. Let's start here. Obviously I've known you for quite a while and got a chance to really get to know your family and everything else. But somehow there's a few people left in the world that haven't got a chance to know you yet. So let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to get into real estate? All the ups and downs and everything else that goes on from this game. What inspired you to get started in real estate?
That's a really great question because initially when I got into real estate, I was looking at it as a hobby.
Mm,
I had a full-time job that I absolutely loved. I loved my manager, all the people that I worked with. I had no intentions of walking away from that job. It was literally just going to be a side hustle, you know. But getting into it, what I did not know is how expensive it can be for a side hustle. So, no one prepares you for that. No one talks about the business side of getting into real estate. It's all glitz and glamour, we're cheesing and posting with the clothes signs and all of that, but no one really gets into the detail of the business part of it. So I got into it literally thinking that, oh, I'll just do this on the side.
from a side business to a real business, and obviously that's a big part of you know I think that that transition from going from seeing it as a hobby to a business is what separates the good agents from all of the other ones. And every agent has to go through this little shift where they think about the business different, but they also think about money different. So that moment for you that you totally changed how you think about not only your business but money overall. What was that moment for you?
Well, I would say that moment was 6 months into me having my license. I was laid off from my job that I loved. I had no intentions of leaving, right? So that happened, and it was literally 6 months into me having my license. I was just messing around with real estate. Like I said, I wasn't taking it serious. But when that happened, I had a decision to make. It was a pivotal point in my life as to, do I take this real estate full time or do I continue to, work in corporate, which is what I was comfortable with.
Yeah.
At the time I was a single mom. My kids were graduating out. I think I still had one more in school at that time, but that was critical because it's like, okay, what do I do? So what happened was because I was still scared, I took a office job, which I could do it in my sleep, right? I could do it with my eyes closed. It was just something so easy that I could do. But 2 weeks into me working that job, I would come home with hives all over my neck. Like I was like I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was too scared to get into real estate full time, right? So one day, leaving the office, I sat in my car and I called my dad and I asked him, I said, Daddy, I'm going to go into real estate full time. And he was like, You got this, baby, do it. And that was all the confidence that I needed to move into real estate full time and to really like, change the trajectory of my business and what I wanted to do with it. And then the other thing, him saying that, it's like, okay, that was my security because if it didn't work out, I could always go back to daddy and say, you said, you said to do this. Now I need you to help me pay these bills. So,
Absolutely.
but anyway, fast forward to today, I think that God has a way of moving you out of the way. And I think that's what he did with that, with my real estate career. It was something that I was supposed to do, right? But I was too afraid for whatever reason. There was a lot of different reasons. One, I was a single mom. Um, all of my kids still lived with me at that time. I was the breadwinner. I was taking care of everything and everybody. And, if I didn't get paid, then nothing was getting paid. So there was that. Then there was the fear of not knowing what the heck I was doing. Like, what am I doing? And I'm going to tell you something I don't think I've ever told anybody. But when I first got my license, you know how in the beginning they force you to go and get your marketing, you got to get your flyers, you got to get your business cards. I didn't get my business cards till like 8 months in because that to me was like official. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, if I have a business card, then that means I'm official. But there's that imposter syndrome that comes along with anything that you're doing different, right? Because again, there wasn't anybody before me that I
Mm,
had in my family that was doing this. So I didn't have anybody to lean on, right? To
absolutely.
show me the ropes, to guide me, to tell me that, this is what it is. Fortunately, I got with a great company that is really good on training and that really helped me to become the agent and the business that I am today.
It's fantastic. That's fantastic. And you mentioned a couple of things that I really want to pull out. You said being able to go back to your dad as a security blanket that comes along with the confidence of your dad, first of all believing in you, but second of
Yeah.
all feeling like, hey, if something happens, I know daddy got me. And as a
Yes.
girl dad, I can definitely relate to that, of always wanting to be in that position of protecting my daughters and making sure that I'm always there for them. But from a
Absolutely.
business perspective, you're stepping out into a business where if you don't work, if you don't produce, if you stop, you don't eat realistically. And so, with that in mind, what does security truly mean to you as you were going through that process?
Well, at that time, security was literally paying my bills. Like, I need to be able to pay my bills and take care of my kids, right? So at that point, that's what security was. But as I have grown and I've matured, I have learned a lot, I've seen a lot, being in this industry. Now, security is a different thing. So for me, now I would say security is about being able to, if my kids come to me and say something like they need something, I want to be able to help them, without a doubt, without counting my coins, like to see if I will be able to help them, because I've been in that position as well. But then long term, security is being able to do whatever it is that I want to do without the thought of, okay, I need to count and I need to, not saying that I just want to live this glamorous life or anything, but I want to be so comfortable and I'm working toward that now, be so comfortable to where money is not an object for me. And part of that means living below your means as well, right?
Yeah.
So part of that is making those sacrifices to see what's truly important because long term we want to be able to have wealth transfer within our family. I want to be able to, when I die, be able to leave my family something that they can have a jump start with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So that we talked about, you mentioned that at some point being in that position where it's not more about paying the bills and things of that nature, but really building towards that long-term wealth for the family and passing that on to the next generation. But I do want you to think back, and we'll play a little game with this. Let's say if when you were in that phase of just getting started and just building, and you had a situation where for 90 days you couldn't work, like physically couldn't work. There's nothing you could do about it. What would you do? What would that do for your income, and how would that impact your lifestyle at that point?
Well, back then, that could have been very detrimental.
Mhm.
Um, 1 month. Forget about 90 days. 1 month could have been really, really detrimental for me because remember, I told you I lost my job 6 months into me having my license. So I started tapping and running through what little I did have saved at that time so quick. It was like that money evaporated. Just trying to cover all of the things that I needed at that time. So that would have been detrimental, and I think it would have been really extremely hard to recover, right? Because I think when you have a deficit like that and you're trying to recover from, 90 days without being without having work, without being able to take care of all the things are still stacking up. The bills are coming whether you're working or not. Like they
Regardless.
are relentless and they're consistent. That could have been really detrimental for me, had that happened during that time.
Now, you put some things in place at this point, and if so, what types of things have you put in place to not make that such a big issue? Let's say that 30, 60, 90-day scenario of making sure that that's not going to have any significant impact on what you do on a day-to-day basis.
So let me just say this. First of all, I'm so open to learning different ways of how to save and looking at different platforms to be able to build wealth. And so I'm completely open. So when I see an idea, I hear of an idea, I'm like, okay, what are we doing? So I'm always looking for opportunities, right? So that's one
Absolutely.
thing. I'm open when it comes to, I'm not a closed-minded person, but really not a closed-minded individual when it comes to, okay, how am I going to build wealth? Because it's not something that I know organically. It's something that I have to go to the experts, right, to help me because no one really, even though I had the ability to go to my dad and say, Daddy, this is what I want to do, no one was walking me through what that financial, status should be. No one was telling me, okay, you need to be saving. No one was saying, get a couple of insurance policies. No one was talking to me about those different strategies. And I found that with my clients, no one's talking to them either, right? And so that is another thing that makes me so passionate. And, I'll toot my own horn, but it makes me so great at what I do when it comes to real estate because I'm not only looking at the buy sell transaction, but I'm looking to help you really secure your financial future as well as, what is this going to look like? Yeah, you have this house, but what are some other ways that we can, tap into the equity? What are some other ways that we can make sure that when you pass away, that things are set in place, that things are in place so that you're not fighting with the probate courts, you're not fighting with heirs. I just think that savings is one of them, going back to your original question. Definitely want to get in the habit of saving. Insurance policies. We have a couple of IUL insurance policies. We have businesses that we are building wealth through our businesses. So it's just a lot of different ways, and you have to do the thing that's comfortable for you, right? I know that stocks and things like that is, that's another way to build wealth, but I'm not really into that. I'm not opposed to it, but it's not something that is like, oh, I want to do that. So if we did that, I definitely would have a financial planner, taking care of that aspect for me.
Well, that definitely makes sense. And I think that rounds it out as far as being able to put together a solid plan. It's you have other sources of income, you have insurance in place that protects that income. You're doing so many different things that you're stacking up to where the 90 days of earned income, yes, that could be eliminated at some point, but you have these other items in place to ensure that, hey, if something happens to this one, as they say, you have those multiple streams. But here's one of the things I always, and I'll throw interject myself in here just a little bit. I always think we get sometimes people get caught up in trying to generate those multiple streams too early. You have to be able to master one stream in order to get multiple streams. So I want to throw that caveat in there first for somebody that's trying to
Yeah,
do 17 different things at one time, and you're not
yes,
making money at any of them. It's because you're pulling
that's
yourself
a
too
problem.
thin.
That's definitely a problem. And I think I mentioned it, but having those different streams, but then tapping into the experts to help you with
Absolutely.
that. I'm not doing all of the things, right? I have people in place that I can go to, you being one of them. Like, what does this look like? How can I tap into this? What can I do, to grow this? Or, I've received X amount of money. How can I make this grow? It's not about you knowing everything because I don't. I didn't, and again, it was people like yourself and other people around me that were, nice enough to show me different outlooks and different ways to really just kind of prepare for our future.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want you to think about on this next question. We're going to think back to maybe it wasn't something that you saw in yourself, but something that really we see, you may maybe see as somebody that at one point was a manager of a really big office, to be quite frank, had a pretty big team there. What's one of the biggest financial mistakes you see agents make once they get that first commission checks, or at least those early commission checks rolling in?
I just think that they, overall, as a real estate professional, real estate agent, there's no one at the front end really talking to you about this being a business. There's no one
Mhm.
talking to you about taxes. There's no one talking to you about transitioning from a corporate payroll job to now you are an independent contractor. You are responsible for your own taxes. I think, and then when you get, because real estate is one of those um, professions that you can make so much money. There's no limit, there's no cap on the amount of money that you can make. And if you're not properly trained, if you don't have the understanding or the education about, okay, what do I need to do with this money? I have it. So the way that I look at my um, commission or my professional fee is it's broken up into three parts, right? So one part of it goes to my broker because that's I have to pay my broker, right? The second part goes to taxes,
Mhm.
right? And then that last part goes to me. And so once everybody else is ate, I really don't have a whole lot. So that big check that we saw earlier has been chopped up. Just knowing that, yeah, while you got this big piece of the pie, you're responsible for paying taxes on all of that,
Absolutely.
right? So it's not on the small part of it. So just understanding that, you got to take care of your financial business and make sure that your financial house is in order. So I think as a new agent, having someone to coach you and walk you through, like, this is a business, and even for some of the older agents, I won't say that this is a new agent problem.
I can definitely see that because old habits die hard. It's very easy to get into the habit of doing something and to be able to break that habit once you get started. I remember like at one point being in the best shape of my life and then getting to the habit of just
Not doing
enjoying
any.
time on the couch. It's really hard to get going again. So I definitely understand that. Speaking of those agents, even the seasoned agents. So have you ever seen or experienced even yourself a deal that or even a life event that almost wiped somebody out financially? And if so, what was the lesson that you learned or that you would like to share to agents in the market about that?
So the thing that comes to mind, and there are so many stories, we can just be on all day just talking about this one thing. But the one thing that comes to mind right now, because it's something that I'm dealing with right now, is it's a deal of my own, right? The husband has passed away, right? There's no will, there's no transfer on death deed, there's no there's nothing. There's nothing. So wife is under the impression that, oh, okay, whole house is mine. Well, husband has four heirs. He has four kids, right? So where wife thought that she would be able to sell her current home and reap the benefits of the net proceeds
Mhm.
to start stacking up for retirement, to buy her next home, now those proceeds have literally been cut in half because it's 50% to her and 50% to the heirs. So all of that, it's a situation where you've spent 20 years paying for a house and you expect to reap the benefits of the net proceeds. And in this situation, it's not going to financially wipe this individual out, but it is going to put a big cap on what she is able to do moving forward. And that's because there was not proper planning, right? When I had the conversation with her to understand, like, okay, why didn't you take care of business? And not to be mean or insulting anyone, but it's like, why didn't this happen? Like, why, what happened? And part of it is there's a lack of education around, will and probate courts and all of that. The other part is that we think we have time. We think we have time. We think that it's not going to happen to me. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I've learned from this particular situation is that we really don't have all the time that we think we have. And so it's best to start taking care of business in the way that you can right now. It may not be doing all the things, but you need to do something. Right? That's just something that is on my heart right now because it's something that I'm literally dealing with. And the situation is kind of devastating because if you are a blended family, we know that, these situations don't always end up good. And, you think you love your stepchildren, sometimes they come up and it's like, they don't like you like that, and you find that out when death happens, right?
Exactly.
Death brings about the weirdest and the meanest things out of people.
Yeah. I just think people, death brings a different range of emotions, right? And we don't know how we're going to respond to that trauma or that feeling, and to have to respond to that and also make decisions at the same time. I always say that's it's selfish almost, because I get a lot of people that I have conversations with, and this happened to me last week. Literally last week, I had a guy reach out online, and he reached out online, and I tried to call him, and never could reach him. And finally, I got a hold to him, and I talked to him for about 5 minutes, and he was like, "You know what? I just thought about it. I got these kids, and that's going to be for them to decide what happens to me and how to pay for it and all of that stuff. So I'm not worried about life insurance anymore. They'll figure it out." And it's such a selfish way to approach someone that you say you love, in my
Yeah.
opinion, of not being in a position where we take we take that burden off of them and just allow them to grieve, one, grieve, but
Agreed.
two, celebrate us without that responsibility. So I definitely think that was a great story on we need to make sure that we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's as we're going through that process.
Yeah. And one thing that I had already started putting this into my business model anyway,
Hmm.
but one thing that I know for sure that will happen is during the buyer consultation, we'll be talking about this stuff. So it's not going to be new. And we'll be talking about it throughout the process. If you buy this house, what are we going to do? We're going to get a will. We're going to do the things that are needed to protect, your assets. Because if not, it's like, it's to your point where, you have a person that's saying, they can deal with it. And it is
Like,
selfish. And it's heartbreaking that so many families experience that. So many families with it could be the selfish thing, it could be the we thought we had time situation. It could be any reason not to have your things in order, right? Anything can happen. But it's like we just have to be diligent in making sure that every time we get in contact with someone, we're having those conversations. And they're hard conversations to have. They're hard
it,
conversations to have.
it is definitely not fun having those conversations before, for sure.
Mhm.
So
Mm,
now
no.
I do want to shift back to the real estate just a little bit, but we are going to stay on this topic of protection. When the market shifts, so right now we're in a shift. Obviously, the market's not what it was just a couple of years ago, or even if life happened, something like sickness or accidents and things of that nature. What's your personal strategy for one, protecting yourself mentally and emotionally, but two, also making sure that you're protecting your income in the meantime?
One thing that I will say is changing my relationship with money, right?
Mm,
Um, Coming up, you know this, but both of my parents were on drugs coming up, and they would give me large sums of money, right? And it was just going over here. So at an early age, I had access to money. And I remember one time going into the mall. It was in Arizona. The mall was Tower Plaza Mall. And I remember going into the mall and buying 3 pairs of everything. So I had 3 pair of shoes, right? I had 3 shirts. And now mind you, the stuff was the same, but it was in different colors, right? But I bought because I was trying to spend every single bit of that $600 up. My mindset was not to save. My mindset was to spend every dime that I had because my parents might come back and need their money back, right? So I read this book and I can't think of the name of it. It is something about the millionaire
mhm,
mindset, millionaire mindset. And it talks about your relationship with money, right? And I really had to have a shift because guess what? I have 3 boys. So guess what? I was buying in threes again. And so all throughout my life, I've been buying in threes. But my mindset as a younger person was I need to spend all this money, right? My mindset as a young adult into adulthood, trying to take care of my kids, was like, I don't have enough to spend, right? Because now I have to buy clothes, I have to buy everything. So it was always that thing that relationship that I had with money that I needed to get rid of it as soon as I could, right? And so that's pretty much has been, had been my relationship with money. And it's a weird thing to say, but it's something that is personal. And I identified that when I read that book. When I read Millionaire Mindset, he talked about what is your relationship with money. And I sat back and I thought about that. I'm like, I buy in threes, you know?
mhm.
And that was like, I think I was about 28 when I read that book, almost 30. That's old to me to really understand, start having a relationship with money or understanding what your relationship with money is, right? So understanding my relationship with money, understanding that my past does not dictate my future,
Mhm.
and understanding what do you want? So that next year, 29, I had what you would call like a midlife crisis. For whatever reason, I was turning 30 the next year. So this is my last year in my 20s. And oh my God, I feel like I don't have my stuff together. What am I doing? What do I want in life? It was just so many things going through my mind. And I had read that book the year before. And so that to me is when my life started to shift. And that's old to me. That's really, when you think about that 28, 29, like you should already have that understanding. But if you don't have anyone teaching you and you're having to learn on your own, then that's what happens. You're, 40 years old, just now realizing what your relationship with money is. So I would say, going back to your original question, I have lots of stories if you can't tell. Going back to your original question, understanding your relationship with money, how you spend it, why you spend it, and then making sure that it does not have anything to do with the trauma that you had experienced when you were a child. Because a lot of the things that we do today is based on trauma that we've experienced as a child, right?
Absolutely.
So separating from that and understanding that, yes, that happened to me, but that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. So that would be first and foremost, the number one thing is understanding your personal relationship with money. The other thing is identifying what you want. Because it's one thing to say, save for a rainy day, but what is it that you want to do? What are your intentions for
Mhm.
yourself, for your family, for your businesses? What are your intentions? Understand, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Um, Zig Ziglar has a quote that says, if you don't plan to go somewhere, you'll end up somewhere else. Right? So you have to understand, okay, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Do I want to be wealthy? What is it? What is it that you want to do? So understanding your relationship with money, understanding what your goals are and set your intentions for your family, and then you begin to work on your personalized plan of how you get to what you're trying to achieve. And then when you're working on that plan, make sure you get with the professionals. Um, Obviously, we don't know what we don't know. So we need to be getting with people that can help guide us and lead us. The same with real estate. You need a real estate professional to help you and guide you through that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned something, a couple of times. You mentioned how important it is to, one, have a plan and be able to work that plan. But two, you've
Yeah.
mentioned your kids a couple of times. So I do want to know how important is building a legacy in your wealth plan, and what does that actually look like for you, mechanically?
Wealth is not only about financial,
Hmm.
right? It's not only about finances. To me, it's not. Wealth is the transfer of information. Wealth is the transfer of identification, right? Who are you? If you don't know who you are, then it's easy for someone else to tell you who you are, right? So wealth is about a mindset. Wealth is about health. It's about how we take care of ourselves. It's not only about all of that. So for me and my family, what we try to do, and I think you know this, we have what we call legacy meetings. And these legacy meetings started when I started to get the understanding of, what am I doing? And it happened around that 29, 30 mark, right? There were a lot of lessons that I did not teach my children. And it wasn't on purpose, and it wasn't that I didn't want them to know, right? It was because I was working hard. I was trying to make sure that the lights were on. I was trying to make sure that they ate. I had three boys. They all wanted to play every single sport, so, so that was like my main focus at that time, was really just staying alive, just really just keeping things together. And so I realized in that point of my life, there were a lot of things that I didn't tell my boys. And you could see it in some of their actions and some of the things that they do, right? So these legacy meetings was my way of going back and having some of these conversations that I didn't get to have with them when they were younger for whatever
Hmm.
reason. Whether I was at work all the time, I didn't know how to present it, I didn't have the information, whatever it was, they didn't get it. And so what that made me think of is, if I'm not teaching them, then where are they getting the information from? And if they're getting it from somebody else, is that person giving them the information that I would want them to have? Right?
Absolutely.
If they're online searching, the web, are they getting the right information? And so for me, I going back, having those conversations, talking about credit, talking about legacy and what that means to them, you know, because for me, legacy is for me, when I think about legacy, I think about experience, right?
Absolutely.
When I pass away, and my children and my grandchildren, when they look back and they think about mom or Charlie or whatever it is that they call me, I want them to understand and to know that, what, we lived a good life, and that I did everything that I could to take care of them, but I didn't just want to be that person that's just taking care of things, but we don't have that relationship. So that to me is, that it's everything to me, about having those conversations with my boys, because it's something. Raising boys, Black boys, as a single mother is something. Like I think about this story. I have my youngest son. He's so tall. He's taller than the other boys. He's just long. And one
Hmm.
day he was laying on the couch and his legs were kind of hanging off the couch in a certain way. And I'm like, boy, I will still dot your I. And he's like, what? I didn't do anything. But it's like there's so many dynamics. And if you don't know, then it's like, what am I missing? What am I telling them? What am I not telling them? So we just want to prepare our children for the best life that they can possibly have. And they can make the choices about what life they want to live. It's their choice.
Absolutely.
But I want them to be able to glean from the things that we do. And we being my husband and I, because now we've incorporated Anthony and his babies, our babies, into the legacy meeting. So, and now it takes on a different meaning. So that to me, I think is important. Is really important.
I think that's fantastic, and I think that's something that myself and probably all of the listeners can really take a lesson from, because you get to add a new layer of perspective as you're growing. So what I know is, as I get ready to turn 40 here, um, me at 20 versus me at 40 are two different people. There's different experiences, and all of these things mean something a little bit differently to me. And so being able to pass those lessons along and be able to accelerate that process for my kids, actually,
Yeah.
I think is something that I definitely need to implement, for Yana and I to implement into our life, with our girls as they continue to move more towards adulthood.
One thing that we've learned with these legacy meetings is that we are learning about our children, right?
Hmm.
We are learning like how they feel about things.
Yes.
And it's a weird dynamic when because my oldest is 30. Can you believe I have a 30-year-old? I have a 30-year-old. So, I'm learning in those settings about, his perspective. I'm learning about the things that are important to him.
Hmm.
So in our meetings, we do have a level of accountability too. So if there's something that I'm doing, like for instance, when I was writing the book, whenever
Yes.
we had our meetings, they would always check me on it. Like, where are we at with that? Well, at that time, it's like, I haven't started. But it's that level of accountability. Well, you said you were going to do this. Why haven't you done it? What's holding you back? And I'm just telling you, I could just go on and on about peeling back the layers of drama and trauma that you have so that you can be a whole and full person for your family,
Absolutely.
right? Because it's one thing I have, you know, my kids have friends that have had two-parent households, but it's a toxic situation. So the parents might as well be single parents, right? So it's like there's so many layers to raising kids. There's so many layers to just living life, be lifing. Is that what they say these days? It's like
Life
there's
be
so
life.
much.
That is
There's
a
so
fact.
much. And we try to do the best that we can with everything that we have. Like we try to be good stewards over everything. And our children are part of the things that we have to be good stewards over.
Going back on that, and that's a good segue to the, we just got a couple more questions here, but if you could go back 10 years, what either money or security move would you have made sooner that will probably change, some of the conversations that you're having right now, or some of the things, and even if it's not something that you would have made, maybe something that, you know, maybe someone in your family should have made, or something of that nature, that you've seen the outcome of that, not being made sooner.
So I won't even go 10 years. I will
Mhm.
just go, let's go just a few years. So
Okay.
one of the things that I wish that I would have had more conversations about with my children specifically, because they are having children of their own, is insurance, right?
Yeah.
Not only insurance for themselves, because for whatever reason, these kids are thinking that, oh, I don't need insurance. I'm only 18. It's like, but you own stuff, don't you? You need to have insurance. You need to have insurance, but trying to convince them at that age that insurance is important, right? So that's one thing. And then as they're starting to have children, making sure that they have proper life insurance for their children and making sure that they have a will for their children. So that's where we are right now, because it's like, you know, my oldest grandbaby has been diagnosed with Due syndrome, and that's a form of a seizure disorder. And it's hard as heck trying to get insurance for him that's not going to cost my son an arm and a leg, right? So had he gotten insurance on him as a baby before all of this weird stuff started happening, then we would have had some better coverage. And let me just say that, better coverage. And now my youngest grandbaby is also experiencing seizures. Now we don't know that these are the same type of seizures, but it's a seizure nonetheless, and helping them to understand that, yeah, I know you may not have the money for it, but let's figure out how we can get start living within our means so that you can take care of those things. And really that's all it's about, is
Yeah.
living within our means and setting the priorities for the things that are important.
That's definitely important, of living within our means, but also keep in perspective how things grow, particularly with insurance. You use the example of life insurance, and that one's a pretty straightforward conversation from a standpoint of cost. The younger you are, the less it costs, right? The healthier you are, the less it costs. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with someone that, they're in their 60s, and they're just now thinking about life insurance because they're starting to see their friends pass away and things of that nature, and they have some health issues, so the cost is a little bit more prohibitive than they would like for it to be. But it's one of those things where it goes back to, what's the cost of not acting. Next year it's going to be more expensive than it is this year, because
Yeah.
chances are you're going to get a year older, but chances are your health is only going to get worse. That's typically how it works as we age. So I think
And
that's definitely important that we start that as early as possible, for sure.
yeah, and there's a cost associated with everything. So going back to the client that I was telling you about,
Uh-huh.
the cost of her not having her things in order is, you know, the difference between her being able to have all of the proceeds versus just 50% of the proceeds. That you pay the cost
That,
of that.
that's a
So
that's
there's
an
a cost
expensive
for
price too.
everything.
That's a
So
very
there's
expensive cost. So that's definitely a great example. So we're gonna wrap up with this one, Jar. Thinking about when you got into real estate, and thinking about where the market is right now, and as somebody that is building a brokerage and a team and things of that nature, what is the best advice for the next generation of realtors about one, building wealth that actually lasts, but also building their business in the process as well? So what would that look like for you as far as advice that you would give to them?
So I have a course that I have. It's called Mind Your Business, and it talks specifically about the things that I think that real estate agents, professionals should be doing as they are launching their businesses. And I was able to write that because it was something that I lacked. So I wrote something that I needed, right? So it talks about, your financial house. It talks about, how are you going to spend your money? There's marketing that needs to happen when you're a real estate agent. It talks about properly structuring your business. Yes, you work under a brokerage for that company, but you are still a business. And so we've got to take off the employee hat and put on the owner hat so that you can run your businesses accordingly. If you continue to run your real estate business as an employee, it's going to be detrimental for you at some point or another. And there's a stat that says that 82% of real estate agents get out of the business within 5 years. And I think that that is because they don't walk into it treating it like a business, right? You walk into it thinking that, oh, someone's going to give me leads, and you need all of these things, right, to get you to the next level. But to me, when I think about being an employee, and this is just my own personal opinion, okay? This is not for everybody, but this is my personal opinion. I think about being a baby. I think about I have to wait for my employee to feed me, to give me money, to do this. I'm not independent, right?
Mhm.
I have to wait on somebody to do what they say they're going to do so that I can do what I would like to do, right? When you are a business owner, you have a little bit more flexibility on the things that you can do, the control that you have, the flexibility that you have with your time. So, as we wrap this up, I want to, my advice would be to treat your real estate career like a business. Do everything that you can not to exchange time for money, because part of real estate is having conversations that you're not getting paid for. Put systems in place so that your business can run even if you need to sit down somewhere for a minute. And that's the season that I'm in my life, right? My parents are older. I have grandbabies that I want to be with. I have grandchildren that I want to take care of. So I am not wanting to run as hard as I did 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
right? And so if I would have thought about that earlier, I would have planned for it earlier. So that's my 2 cents.
That's definitely great advice. Thank you so much for that. And once again, I want to thank you for just agreeing to be on the show. I know there's going to be a lot of agents that get a lot of impact from all of your advice. And there you have it, folks. We want to thank you guys for listening in.
Yeah,
We got some different
thank you.
ways to think about money, security, and real estate career overall. If today's conversations got you thinking, stick around. We're going to go deeper into how to actually put some of these ideas into action. And until next time, keep building, keep protecting, and keep playing the long game. Protect the play, secure the win.